Hey guys, Chris with Hefty Fabworks here again. Today we're going to do a cool install on this 4Runner here, this Trail Edition 4Runner, with our new, or our aluminum front bumper for the full bumper for the 5th Gen 4Runners. This version here is actually a low hoop version. We have 4 different models of this particular bumper for your truck. We have one with no hoop, with the low hoop, a full pre-runner version, and then also a full 3 hoop or full guard type version as well. We get a lot of questions about, is aluminum strong enough? And the answer is absolutely. If we're building them properly, if they're engineered properly, aluminum can be as strong, if not stronger, than a lot of the steel counterparts out on the market today. So we sell a ton of this bumper. We've had this bumper be in animal strikes, multiple pretty serious collisions and auto accidents, and it does an absolutely phenomenal job of protecting the vehicle as well as off-road use. It's going to hold up really, really well. There's nothing weak about this bumper, even with it being aluminum construction. You can see this one here, what we've already got in it. We've got our the Warn VR 10,000 pound winch. This winch is probably the most popular one that we sell with this product. It is a good solid quality product from Warn at a decent price range as well, so you don't have to spend $2,000 on a winch to get a good product, but you do get a really solid unit with this. In addition, we've got a 30-inch rigid light bar and rigid flush mount fogs on this one, and we're going to kind of pull this down towards the front here. From the back side, you can see here that we have the winch pre-installed into the bumper. We do end up clocking the winches, so we're basically taking the clutch lever portion and we are undoing the bolts and rotating it forward so that the clutch lever is on the front of the winch, and that gives us easy access for when you're actually out on the trail working with it. These bumpers, you can see the flush mount units here. They do also accept a standard surface mount, so your SAE lights, the Baja design lights, all of those will fit in these bumpers. In addition to that, you'll see that our control box for the winch is sitting loose right now. That's actually for a reason. Because of the height, this will not mount on top of the bumper. So you do have to, when you're buying a winch for your bumper, you do have to buy one that you can actually remove and relocate the control box. We're gonna relocate this up behind the grill, and we've got a little bracket for that, and should make installation real simple there. From the back side of the bumper, you can see here that there's a lot of our structure here. Our backbone system is actually a 3/8 6061 T6 aluminum, and then all of our shell components are a 5052 aluminum, so it's a little bit softer aluminum on the shell, which is what we want. Those the different types of aluminum to have different qualities and different strengths. So the 6061 is extremely strong. It's a high tensile strength aluminum. So that actually is run all the way through. That is the recovery points on the front of the bumper. It is our mounting system. But one thing that we do different is our frame mounts that bolt to the truck are actually 1/4-inch steel plate. And so we mount these a little bit different. They will mount on, and then they mount to the side of the bumper here. Through the 6061 T6, that allows us to have the absolute maximum amount of strength that we can get, rather than trying to mount the bumper to the truck just with an aluminum plate. It eliminates the chance of the bumper ripping off the truck in a recovery or during winching. It gives us a lot more strength with these mounts. In addition to these mounts, they do wrap under the frame, but they're also designed to bend in an accident. So your crumple zones, those types of things that we hear a lot of worries about from customers, the mount is actually designed to bend. So in an accident, the bumper is actually going to bend in a hard enough hit, and it's going to kind of fold back towards the tires. They're designed like that to, reduce the amount of impact force that you have in an accident, because our top priority above everything else is making sure that our customers are safe. So that's a huge feature with what we're doing here. It's very different than what a lot of our competitors are doing or a lot of the other products on the market are doing. But it's something that we've kind of worked with and perfected over the time. We also, underneath the winch tray here, we do have additional gusseting that runs down to the main plate. So everything's tied together, adds a lot of strength. Our little cutout areas underneath the headlights, the little teardrops or fangs or whatever everybody likes to call them. This section here actually ends up being the strongest portion of the bumper, as this section is fully boxed. So we actually have our top section, we've got another lower plate, and then a third plate underneath that kind of covers up on some of the understructure. But all of those items together, including the boxing here, create one of the strongest bumpers on the market, simply because of the way that we're building it. All of the reinforcement and everything is designed to actually create a lot of strength in this bumper. So you don't have to worry about your bumper folding up if you tap it. It's not going to give on rocks. It's not going to give you any sort of a failure point like that you would see on a typical use. A lot of the comments that we get about aluminum is weak are just naive and people just don't understand it. You're not getting a weak bumper when you purchase this product. You're getting one of the strongest bumpers on the market. Going over the parts that you're going to receive when you get your bumper, you're going to obviously receive the bumper. You're going to end up with a left and a right frame mount. In addition to that, you're going to end up with our cooler line guards. These are made to protect the power steering cooling lines that sit just outside. So these will actually mount onto your mounts just like this, just over top of it. And they do help protect the cooler lines from getting damaged during off-roading. In addition, you'll have our lower fill panel. This one, it just covers up the gap between the skid plate and the bottom of the bumper. It gives us the most approach angle that we can get on the bumper, but gives us that gap filler there. It can be used in addition with the TRD Pro skid, or it can be left off if you want that full TRD Pro skid look as well. If you are running the TRD Pro skid, it will work with all the aftermarket skid plates on the market, so you don't have to worry about compatibility that way either. It is designed for that. And then in addition, you'll get a box full of hardware that is all individually labeled as far as what it is. A new addition to our product line that we're going to start sending out is this little bracket here, and this is a control box relocation bracket for your winch. It's pretty universal. It's not necessarily going to work for every winch application, depending on what brand you get, but for the most part, it is going to work for most of the winches that we see our customers using to relocate that control box back up into the engine or behind the grill. So we're going to go ahead and get started on our installation now, but those are the parts that you get when you do order your bumper. All right, so here's the fun part of the installation. This is the part that everybody freaks out on when they're trying to do this on their own at home. So marking the bumper for your cut. This is always the area that everybody's worried that it's not going to be straight, it's not going to be cut right, but we're going to show you some tricks and tips to get you in the right direction and get this thing done, so you get a good, smooth, clean cut. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what we use. We use two different types of tape to mark this out. I do mark it when it's still on the vehicle. The reason for that is that you can visually see the straight lines and you can stand back in different directions and take your time looking at it, making sure it's nice and straight, and that way you don't have to worry about taking it off and having a crooked line when you cut. So leaving it on the vehicle while you're doing this step is definitely a huge advantage. It's going to help you out a lot. I do take the bumper off of the vehicle to do the cut though. I've seen people try to do it on the vehicle. It works a lot better to take it off. So I use two different types of tape here. I've got your standard blue painter's tape. This is a 2-inch wide tape. So this isn't very flexible, but it works really well as far as a barrier between where you're cutting and the fresh paint. The other one I use is this 1-inch frog tape. So this is the green frog painter's tape. The nice thing about this tape is it doesn't rip very easy like the blue tape does. So it's got a little bit more flexibility in it, so you can go around curves and contours. As much as we're trying to do a straight line, all of the various curves in the surface will make it very difficult to keep a straight line with the blue tape. So we use the green tape to kind of give us that line. So when we start, we're going to start from the edge of the vehicle here. So you've got a seam line right here where your plastic bumper cover is going into the metal fender. So we're going to start right along this line. This is going to be our guide point, starting from here. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down right about a quarter to half an inch, somewhere in there. It's not super critical. We just want to leave enough material there to have something for it to grab onto when you're putting it all back together. So what you're going to do is you're just going to kind of go around with this green tape and mark it off. And what I do is I come in and we're trying to get a straight line right across this section here. Once we get that straight line, we're just going to kind of come out here and we're going to run all the way across. We're going to skip this center section for now because we don't really want to mess with that too much. Okay, so when we bring this across, where we're gonna land here should be on the center grill here. If you look, each one of these center blocks here, we should land right about the center of this second block down. So when you come back around, we're gonna come in, it should be right around the end of the center of it to be straight. So it's gonna come in just about like that. So I'm gonna stop it right there. This measurement here should be right at 2 inches, which if you grab your blue tape is 2 inches wide. So if we go right up underneath here, this will kind of give us an idea of where we need to be. So I'm sitting a little bit lower than I want to be right now, but we can use that as a guide. And pull this back off, come back up, and bring that right back around and into our mark here. So there you can see that's our point that we want to be at here. Now when we get back around to the side over here, what we're going to do is if you take a small piece about 6 inches long of your green tape and you're going to run this back in behind here, and you can kind of get eye level with it and just kind of visually look back across the tape line to get that kind of marked in right where you want it to. So it's sitting level as you look across your tape line here. We want it to line up just about even with the tape that you're putting on right now. Then once that's done, we're going to go ahead and rip this in half here. This side here, we're going to wrap around, wrap it right over top of all these parts here. That should line up pretty close right to the edge there. And don't worry if it's not 100% perfect lined up, it's going to be really close, and when we start putting the blue tape down, it'll line up right where we want it to. So right there is essentially our tape mark here. Now I'm doing this a lot faster than most people will because I've done it so many times. So don't be discouraged if it takes you a while to get it done and get it to the proper height and where you want it to be. So we're just gonna put the blue tape right above our green tape here. And this gives us a good definitive line of where we're gonna do our cut. So we're just gonna wrap this back in around here, put that in there, come back over here. Go around the corner here, you can kind of see how it kind of bunches up here. It doesn't wrap like the green tape does. That's why we try to use the green tape down low where our mark line is, because you're going to kind of crease the tape a little bit here. So now I'm going to come up around the corner here, and we're going to tape off just above this onto the fender line because we don't want the fender to get scratched up while we're doing the installation either. So over here, doesn't matter, we're going to end up trimming all of this off. So we're actually going to cut it back in this area here. So once you get that taped, go ahead and take a knife and just really carefully, without scratching the paint, go ahead and just score out your line here. And that way, when we're ready to pull this off, we're not pulling off all the tape on the fender as well. So that's the first side. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same thing on the other side now, get it nice and even. Now that we've got the tape lines all done, everything looks pretty good, we're going to go through just to make sure, you know, for our own sanity, for making sure that everything's correct. We're going to go ahead and take a tape measure. We're just going to find some common spots along here to measure side to side to make sure that we don't have anything that's a little funky. The bumper, once you mount this, is adjustable up and down a little bit, so you don't have to worry about it being absolutely the perfect height. We're going to be able to move that bumper up and down to match where we want it to be. So we're going to go through here, just kind of get a couple ideas. So I'm at about 5.5 inches there, and then over on this side, I'm sitting actually a hair high on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm at 5 1/4 strong, so I'm about 1/8 inch off. So what I'm going to do on this side, just to make sure that we're even, so I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to make a mark where I want it to be. and this will be where the blue line actually ends up being. So because I'm off on that side, before we go and cut, we just want to make sure that everything looks good. So we're going to go back in here with just another layer of blue tint. And we know that where we're landing back here compared to here, it's a little low on, or lower on that side than this side. So I'm going to drop that green line down a little bit as well. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go back in here, just lay another layer of tape on here, and we're just overlapping that green tape right now, just to get it down to where that line is. We're going to bring it right back in, just like that. And then at that point, we're going to be a little bit straighter on our cut from side to side. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove this, this dust dam between the radiator and the grill. So what you're going to do, it's going to have all these little push pops in here. And so what we're going to do is, to get these out, all you do is push down in the center, and it's going to pop these up. And then once you push down, those will pop out. So you don't have to pry on them, you don't have to try to get them up. Those pop right out nice and easy without breaking them. If you try to pop up or pull the little tab out, you're going to break them. So push down in the center, that pulls them out. We're just going to put them all back in here just to kind of keep everything safe and out of the way. Now, if you zoom in here, when you're putting these back in, you can see it's kind of recessed down in there since we push it out. If you just push down on this, it'll pop back up. And that's how you're going to install these back in. And when you install them back into the position at the end, you put them back into the hole, and they're just going to go down, and you just push it till it's flush with the top, and then it'll hold. Again, to get them out, you pushing down, and they'll pop right up and out, and just pop them back out like that, so that when you want to use them, they're popped back up, and then you can push them back in. So we're going to remove the air dam here. Now we're going to start pulling the bumper off. So we're going to pull the whole grill, the bumper, everything off of the vehicle. So there's some clips here. These clips actually do pop up. So you'll see there's a little tab on them to pop them up with a screwdriver. So we're going to pop all of those up. We're going to pull the 4 clips down in here on this first grill area. So there's these 4 clips here. There's 1 bolt. It's a 10 millimeter. So 10 millimeter wrench to pull this off. And then along the bottom side and the side next to the fender, there's going to be some 10 millimeter, use a 10 millimeter socket or a Phillips screwdriver. But you can pull all these out. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull this whole bumper off, disconnecting the fog lights from the factory harness. Once we get this all pulled off, then we're ready to go ahead and start getting everything prepped to start doing the install and cutting our bumper. All right, now that we've got the bumper shell taken off as well as the grill, it kind of gives us a good view of what's left underneath here. So this is our factory crash bar. It happens to be made out of aluminum as well. But we're gonna go ahead and remove the crash bar all the way back to the frame mounts. So there's kind of a can on the end of these. This is all gonna be pulled off, and our new bumper and mounts are gonna actually mount way back here. In addition to that, you've got these air dams. These are going to get trimmed and cut back, or in the case of this bumper, we can actually remove them entirely. They're not necessary at that point. Along the side over here, when we come around the side, there's this black bracket here. This is actually what keeps your fender in, or your bumper in place. What we're going to do with this is there's 2 bolts holding it in place here and then here. We're going to remove that, and then there's a clip in the center. This clip is kind of a pain to get out without breaking. We're going to do our best not to break it on every one of these applications because we do want to reuse this. We are going to take this piece though, and right behind the center hole here, where that clip is, we're actually going to cut right along this line and discard this rear section, but we are reusing the front portion of this. So we do want to cut this right along this area right here. So that's going to be kind of the next steps. As we're cutting the bumper, we're going to cut this as well. The inner fender liners, these are going to get trimmed back. What you will notice here is we do have the washer reservoir. Typically what we do with these, there's a couple ways to deal with the washer reservoir. The most common, it's not really in a majorly vulnerable spot. I don't hear a lot of people having issues with them. The biggest thing afterwards is it does kind of look ugly. So 90% of our customers, what they're gonna do is we scuff it, clean it off, and we're gonna spray it with some just rattle can spray on bed liner, kind of touch it up, and then we'll just zip line or zip tie all of these lines back out of the way, kind of clean it up a little bit underneath. On vehicles like this that are white, you do see a lot of the understructure. So what we'll do on this one, we'll go ahead and clean it up. We'll do the same treatment underneath and just kind of spray everything black underneath, so it actually cleans it up, makes it look really clean once we do the install. You're not going to see all that white structure behind. On the darker colored vehicles, it really doesn't make any difference. You're not going to see that afterwards, but on white vehicles and silver vehicles especially, we do tend to see that a lot more. On the inner fender liner here though, right where the fender meets at the end of the bottom of the bumper, we're just going to take a utility knife and we're going to cut it all the way back in the fender and just kind of get the rest of this excess, all this leftover stuff. We're just going to pull all this out of the way. So we're just going to trim it off, kind of keep it nice and tight. Just make sure on this side with the washer reservoir that you don't cut through your washer reservoir, because that can happen very easily with a sharp knife. So just kind of take it nice and slow and easy, and you're just going to cut this off. We're going to trim that, get that out of the way when we go to mount our bumper. All right, so we've gotten everything removed that we need to, so basically stripped everything down. We've gone ahead and sprayed our areas here that are going to be kind of exposed or visible from the side. We sprayed those with the bed liner. We sprayed our reservoir with the bed liner. One of the other things we've done, since this bumper won't allow you to reuse your factory fog lights, we've gone ahead and spliced in the pigtail harness for the, in this case, the rigids. Now there's 2 wires here from the factory on your factory harness. It's a white wire, it's got these little dots on it, but it's a white wire, and then there's a white with a black stripe on it. The white with the black stripe is your neutral or your ground, and then the plain white is your actual hot. So just make sure you do red to white and then your black to your one with the black stripe, and that'll pull it right into your factory fog light harness. So your factory switch on your dash will actually work for these fog lights. Works really well on most of the LED aftermarket fog lights because they don't pull enough power to cause any issues with it, but gives you a good factory feel, so you don't have to run a switch into the cap. All right, so the next step, we're going to mount our frame mounts to the truck. One of the things that we're running into the same factory holes that we just pulled out from, so those holes should be all pretty good and cleaned out as far as the threads and everything. If you do have excessive rust or anything on this area here, we do recommend you, just like doing any of our products, clean this area off so there's not a lot of dirt and grime on there. And if it is rusty, go ahead and spray some paint on it to clean it up. The other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be tying into the side of this frame here. There's one threaded hole here. That hole tends to be pretty gunked up with just dirt and grime because nothing's used there from the factory. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 12 millimeter by 1.25 thread pitch tap, and we're going to actually go ahead and just tap this just to be safe. Make sure that we can clean out those threads before we actually run a bolt into it. It just cleans it up, makes it easier so we don't end up with cross threading or any issues there. All right, so we've gone ahead and we've installed the frame mounts as well as the cooler line guards here. So they're all set up and ready to go. They are still a little bit loose, so we can actually manipulate them and move them back and forth if we need to fit the bumper. I've also come over on the side here and I've gone ahead and trimmed this bracket back, just like I was saying, just past that other circle. So that's all trimmed properly for what we're going to do for our cuts. And our next step is actually to go ahead and cut the bumper, and then we'll install the new Hefty Fabworks bumper and then install the plastic pieces with it. So we're going to go ahead and do this next and go ahead and get this cut and go from there. All right, so here comes the fun part. We've removed the factory fog lights and the little bezels from each side. We've got all of our tape lines marked out, and the bumper cover is sitting here on these sawhorses just to kind of help us out. We're going to go ahead and start cutting. When you cut these bumpers, the easiest way to do this is actually to start from the center and work your way out. What that does is that leaves the majority of it intact, and you're not trying to cut from the floppy ends. So when you cut out, it just kind of leaves everything nice and solid. It makes it easier to work with. You can use multiple different types of tools for these, whether it's a jigsaw or a reciprocating saw or some of the vibrating cutting tools. Those work well. We recommend staying away from anything like abrasive blades or anything like a cutoff wheel on a grinder, as those tend to melt the plastic and causes the cut line to be a little bit more of a pain to clean up after the fact. So today we've got this little reciprocating saw here, and we're just gonna go ahead and use this. First off, we've got the tape lines on these that are following along with what we had there. So we're gonna cut those in half. We're gonna retain the upper portion, and the bottom part goes in the trash. So let's start with that. So we're just retaining this portion of it. All right, so set those aside for right now. All right, and I'm gonna start in the center grill. I have not removed the grill section from the bumper. I'm gonna leave it in place. We're just gonna cut with everything just like it is right here. And when I finish cutting this, I don't cut all the way down and through it because we're not going to retain this last section. So I'm going to cut it up just like this. You can see I'm not exactly 100% on that line. We'll take care of that after the fact. But it's definitely easier to have a second set of hands holding and helping you keep everything from flopping all over. But we're going to go do the other side, and then we'll come back and we'll clean it up and show you how to get a good finish on it. We have the actual cut done. When you're looking at this inside lip right here, there's a little indent recess right here, and this is going to correspond with where we cut the black retainer. So all I'm doing is taking just an end cutter here, and I'm just going to cut it right like that, right inside that indent on both sides. So now at this point we can discard the lower portion. We're not going to need anything from that. And at this point we'll go back through on our cut line and we'll start cleaning it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a DA sander and clean that whole edge up. So if we have any imperfections, if it's high or low, we can actually clean it up with that sander, and it's going to give us a really clean finish. It should look like a factory finish when we're all wrapped up and done. Once that's done, it gives us a pretty clean edge here. And then one thing we can do is if there's any little slags or little pieces of plastic left over, which is not uncommon, you can run either a razor blade or a sharp knife and kind of come in at an angle here, like 45. And don't try to cut it. Actually, I hold the blade backwards and just run across it, and that'll actually scrape off any of the excess that we end up with there without scratching into the paint. And then when we pull that off, we're gonna end up with a very clean edge cut. If you do it right and you get it nice and clean, you shouldn't need any edge trim or anything on these. That'll actually give you a really good factory finish. So that's the hard part. That's the part everybody's scared about. All right, so depending on which style of front bumper you order from us, whether it's the pre-runner hoop or the full grill guard, either of those two options, you are gonna have to reinstall the plastic upper grill portion and bumper portion back onto the vehicle before installing the bumper. For the low hoop and the no hoop versions, you can do it after the fact, which is actually what we're gonna do today. That way we can show you a little bit more on mounting the winch and where the winch control box goes. But for visual, this is where you're at. This step is you're gonna be at this point where you've got the plastic grill cover back on. We have not attached it, it's still loose up here, but it is sitting back in place. If you come over to the side here, you can see where our cut is. Again, we've cut that plastic bracket and we're cutting our upper bumper portion in the same location there. So it will have just that little bit of a cutoff there. What this does is this keeps us, if we come all the way back, that piece tends to pull out and get floppy. So by cutting it back here, it gives us just a little bit cleaner finish in the overall end scheme of things. So this is kind of how it all looks like when it goes back together. We're gonna go ahead and pull this back off to do the bumper installation so we get a better visual on that. And we'll go from there. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and install the bumper. We've got the upper bumper portion taken off again. It does help to have extra sets of hands during this process just because of the weight, especially when you have a winch in it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna lift the bumper into place. The bumper actually slides in between our frame mounts, so it doesn't go outside of them, it goes in between the two frame mounts. And then we supply you all the hardware for mounting not only the frame brackets to the frame, but also the 1/2" grade 8 hardware that's gonna mount the frame mounts or the bumper to the frame mounts. While we're doing that, we're also gonna fish the control box for the winch back up into its location. It's a lot easier without the front fascia on there, but again, it depends on which model you have, whether or not you can remove that and put it on after the fact or whether you have to have it on beforehand. So there's 3 bolts on each side, 3 1/2" grade 8 bolts on each side that are going to hold it in place, along with fender washers, a lock washer, and a nut for each one of these. All of that hardware again is included with your purchase here. And we're going to get all those started. And the bumper right now is just kind of hanging on its bracket, so it's not in its final position. It's just kind of hanging here for right now. We'll do our final positioning after we get the winch hooked up and get the bumper cover back on, then we'll position it into place and go ahead and crank everything down and tighten it down. Okay, so we've already hung the bumper, so it's not tightened down, it's not in position, but it is actually hanging on its mounts. We're gonna mount the control box now. So what we have is our new bracket here, the control box bracket, that we've attached the winch controller to right here. And we're making sure that our axis for the controller is facing up. So the top of the bracket is going to be at the top where that is. This bracket is going to slide behind our center core support here. We have 2 supplied 6mm bolts and these large fender washers. They're going to go from the back side here, and they're a little difficult to get in, but there are actual threaded nuts on the back side here. And once you get those started, and in place. Then all we're going to do is just go ahead and tighten these down. To position our control box. So using a 10mm ratchet or ratcheting driver here, which makes it a lot easier. Go in and just tighten those up. And then your control box is relocated there. Now I did, in order to make room, I did disconnect the control wire for the air conditioning unit, which goes right here. You just want to be careful that you're not hitting this or breaking this while we're doing the install. So I did remove it for ease of access. Just don't forget to plug it back in or your air conditioning won't work. So that is the winch installation as far as the control box. For the remainder of the winch installation, you're going to take your positive line and your negative line, and you're going to run them up and through and just kind of route them up to the battery, and they go direct to the battery, a positive and negative direct to the battery terminals. So that's the next portion of installing the winch, and that's pretty much it. So we've just finished installing the winch and the wiring for the light bar. So we've got that all sitting here ready to go. It's all cleaned, kind of put in place so that we don't have any loose wires hanging out. Making sure that we have enough room behind the winch that we don't run into running our winch cable into the wiring and everything we have back here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and now install the bumper cover, get that in place, and then we're going to go ahead and position our bumper up into its final place of resting. Its final resting place. So anyway, we're going to get it all positioned correctly and get everything ready to go here. Okay, so we're putting the one small bolt in here, as well as the two top clips and the 4 underneath. That's what's going to hold the grill in through the center. So same ones we removed, we're just putting them back in. On the sides of the bumper and underneath the headlights, it's just going to go right back into that clip, and it'll clip right back into place here. So at this point now, the bumper cover is all secured. The bumper is on, but we're going to go ahead and lift it up into position, tighten everything down. If for some reason you've got the bumper seems like it's shifted one direction or the other, that's not uncommon due to the fact that these trucks are actually a body on frame, so they're not all exactly the same out of the factory. Not contrary to popular belief, not every truck comes out exactly the same. So if you have the bumper where it feels like it's off one direction or the other, once you get it up into place, kind of tighten it down, take a look at everything. If it's shifted one direction, tighten the opposite side down first. That will suck the bumper one direction or the opposite direction and kind of even everything out. There shouldn't be any issue with getting it pretty well centered on these trucks. So that's what we're going to do next. Just go ahead and lift it up into place, kind of hold it up while we tighten it down. When we position these, what we want to do is we want to make sure that underneath the bumper, between the bumper and the factory plastic, you want to run about a ½ inch of gap. If you go too tight, what you're going to end up with is the bumper's constantly going to be rubbing against the factory plastic. Or when you go off-road, the body flexes and you're going to get a lot of issues where it's actually going to try to pull the plastic from the bumper or from the truck. So by leaving that about ½ inch gap, that gives us a good solid area for the body to actually flex and not have issues with the bumper.
Hey there, America. We're going to wrap this here install up by putting this nifty little skid on. It's the Hefty Nifty skid. So what we're going to do is there are 3 holes with the supplied 3/8" bolt. Just slide that up through. You're going to start in the middle. That way you can kind of pivot it. Kind of wedge your hand up in there. So you just get them started so they're loose, so you can still work the other ones. Space is kind of limited, so if you have a friend with small hands and Trevor's not available, try and utilize their help if you can. All right. So then just grab a 14mm and you should get tightened down.
All right, so now that Ben has showed you how to install our lower skid panel, I had to take a phone call from a customer quick. We're going to show you here, we're going to create an access point for the winch control box. So we've got it kind of marked out here where that opening is going to be on here. But what we're going to do on this is just that air dam. We're just going to drill some holes in the corner. And go ahead and cut that out so that we can have a nice clean little area. And I don't have my tools to cut it with. So we'll come back with it cut. All right, so we got the panel, the hole cut out, so we have access down to the winch control box right through here. So if you do need to run your wireless or your remote back in here, for instance, if your wireless battery dies or whatever, you can still get quick access to plug in. Other than that, we're just going to put these clips back in, get this splash guard reinstalled, and that will complete our installation of the bumper. One thing that we're going to go over quick is the winch and how to set that up initially for the first time. If you are running a winch, we want to make sure that you guys do it properly so that you don't end up with problems and having to buy new parts for your winch. Come put these in. Anyway, so when you come over here to your winch, we've got our clutch lever here, which we did rotate towards the front. We also flip the handles on these for the warns so that they actually flip the other direction. So you've got your free spool, which is up. That'll allow you to pull things out, and then it'll lock into place when you turn it to the side here. So you want it to stay in that side position. Once we go ahead and get this set up, we're going to spool the line in. But before you use this winch, you want to run what's called a hard spool on these winches. So you're going to run this line all the way out until the line turns red. Once that line turns red on here, when you're winching anything else, that's as far as you want to go. It's your warning not to go any further. You want to make sure that you leave all of the red rope onto the spool so that you don't unspool the line from the winch. To do a hard spool, initial hard spool, you run the line all the way out till it turns red, hook the winch up to something stationary or another vehicle. But basically, if you can have the vehicle kind of downhill a little bit, put the vehicle in neutral. It helps to have somebody else in the front seat just kind of helping you guide it along. But with the weight of the vehicle on the winch, it'll kind of tension that line and stretch it a little bit tight. So as you reel it up, it's going to reel up nice and tight and even. If you try to use it out of the box like this, pull out some lines, start winching in, what'll happen is this line will actually kink up on itself, and at that point it basically ties itself in a big knot. So you want to make sure that you're good and hard spooled on these winches before you do use them. Again, same thing with basic winch maintenance. once every 6 months, once every year. Typically I try to do it in spring and fall for mine. If you pull the line all the way out, run it through a bucket of soapy water, that's going to clean out all the grit and everything in your winch line. That alone will make your winch synthetic cables last a lot longer. It's good maintenance to do a couple times a year. And then go ahead and do that hard spool, make sure it's all lined up nice and easy. You do have the viewport here to be able to see your winch line when you're looking at the winch. You can stand off to the side, but you can still see it's spooling up, so you can make sure it's not tying itself up. But go ahead and do that for basic maintenance and initial setup on your winch. Again, clutch levers here, control access up here, and on these new Warns, they are a wireless remote as well, so you don't really have to have it plugged in all the time, but you do have that access when you do need it. So other than that, that pretty much completes the install of the bumper. Definitely increases your ground approach a lot, or your front end approach a lot. Definitely is going to add a lot more protection and just gives it a lot meaner and aggressive look. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and pull this out of the shop, get it all out in the sun, and take some photos and videos of it so you guys can see the final product. All right, well, that completes the installation of our 5th Gen 4Runner aluminum bumper on this customer's truck here. Hopefully this helps you guys out with your installations, as well as being able to kind of gauge an idea of what the product is, what you're going to get, and what the final product will look like on your truck. Hope this helps. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give us a comment in the comment section below the video, or visit us on Instagram, Facebook at Hefty Fabworks. Give us a call. Check out the website. We'd be happy to get you guys set up with your own truck and hopefully get you some hefty product on it. Thanks a lot.